the wall of STEM education for her. Smart Israel, One Child Africa, Rwanda.
Hello, everyone. I want you to close your eyes for 5 seconds out of my time and imagine Africa. Now you may open your eyes. For some people, you imagine the things you've heard. For other people, you've actually imagined the things you've experienced if you're actually from Africa. These are things like the impact of climate change, droughts, increasing mortality, disease, and many more, but to mention just a few. But that is not the complete story. Before I tell you the full picture, let's do a comparative. Today, we talk about AI, climate change, and even renewable energy. But somewhere in Kimironko, Rwanda, a high school science student does not know what a microscope or a telescope looks like. Somewhere in Nigeria, Jalingo, a high school student does not know what it means to carry out a titration experiment. That is the sad story. But this is the big picture. In the next decade, Africa would produce the youngest, biggest population on Earth. This can mean two things. One, we can position ourselves to produce the largest skilled labor on the continent, or we can just multiply all the bad things you've just imagined in Africa because of our increasing population. The key to this distinct future that might occur is one thing: the kind of access to education that we allow these children to receive. And that is where One Child Africa comes in. It's simple. One Child Africa is dedicated to imagining how education is done in Africa. We improve education by using hands-on and practical learning to improve how these children learn. My team and I go to the rural communities in Africa. For about 2 weeks, we develop a curriculum where we develop our own STEM kits and teach them how to use these STEM kits, number one, to practically go through everything they've learned in their science classes. For sustainability, we train a learning coach that is able to promote sustainability even after we leave. We set up learning centers in these learning communities or in the communities where we visit. But that's not all. At the end of the 3 days, or 3 days to the end of our program, we divide these students into think tanks, and then they pick up a problem statement and prototype for their society's most pressing challenges. It's simple. We've seen children build fire alarm systems, drone technology, and a little kid from Zimbabwe named Takura has been able to develop a hydroponic system that is able to serve his own community. And today, he's been able to grow over 400 kilograms of fresh vegetables in the arid area in Zimbabwe. That is the impact we seek to create. Our learning outcomes. So in one of the trainings we had, a young lady walked into the training session, and she had blood stains on her clothes. We realized that she was on her period, but didn't know how to handle it. So we expanded the scope of our curriculum and developed board games and card games to teach about sexual reproductive health and rights. We've distributed over 400 of these kits to the children and girls. They learn about their sexuality and in turn teach their younger ones. Also, we've been able to see these children champion change like Takura in his own community and has been nominated for the Commonwealth Awards. More so, we know that these children now learn better by doing. Children in rural communities in Africa now have the ability to know what science is. When we talk about AI in the Western world, at least they are able to know what we talk about. They are able to visualize it, and they are able to prototype for their society's most pressing challenges. Every generation has a defining framework. For some generation, it was to put a man on the moon. For another generation, it is to push the frontiers of AI. My generation is dedicated to creating a world where everyone has a sense of purpose, because we think that is very important, especially for the African continent. One Child Africa seeks to create a world where everyone in the next decade would be one that they position themselves to create the Africa that we seek to create. We're breaking the inequality that exists in STEM, and particularly for young girls. Join us to accelerate this change. Thank you very much.
Hi, and thank you for the presentation. I've heard from the story you've told that there's some hyperlocal change that you're seeing, but you've also got this grand statement, One Child Africa, and I wonder how you manage that kind of continent-level change as well as that change within individuals and communities.
So, if I get your question clearly, how do we manage change on a broader level? Yes. So the first thing is, when we were thinking of coming up with this solution, we knew that Africa was a very big continent, and we had a big job to do because of how these areas are very large. And we thought of how we could start one child at a time. Usually when you go to these communities, they face issues like lack of electricity, hunger due to like climate aridness of the particular places. So what we then do with the children is to say, first of all, we expose them to what it means to learn, like the practical hands-on learning we teach them. But more importantly, at the end of the day, we make them think beyond just themselves. And that is why we allow them to pick a problem statement for their own community. Some of them pick issue of energy, and they're able to use things like plastic waste to develop renewable energy solutions. And that is why someone like Takura has been able to develop a hydroponic system that serves his own community. So the first stage is for us to be able to teach them what it means to expand beyond the scope of theoretical learning. The next stage is for us to teach them to go beyond just themselves and to prototype for their society's most pressing challenges. Thank you.
Perhaps I was missing something, but the project is named STEM for Her. Where are the women in this? What are you doing with women in particular?
Exactly. So if you look at the way the African continent is situated, most of the children, the barrier for entry into education is significantly high, but it's even higher for young ladies. What we do then when we go to these communities is that we prioritize them on a 60 to 40. So if we're having a training session, we prioritize the women on 60 to 40. But more importantly, we have a session for the women where they start about the sexual reproductive health and rights, which has been significantly helpful to them. And I think our impact is we've seen more women take science careers in these communities that they ordinarily wouldn't have. Thank you.
So I think it's great that you mentioned surprises, because much of great discoveries really happen unplanned. So my question is, like, can you share any other surprise that made you like shift your focus across the project? Like a discovery, a surprise that made you move, for example, this case on like focusing on female literacy on the period, for example?
Yeah. Thank you. I think the first thing is to say that ordinarily, before children go to the college from high school, the barrier is usually very high. Right now, when they prototype, they go to universities and say, this is the solution we've come up with. It's easier for them to get access to college from this project that we enable them to do, because now they have the practicality of what we do. But more importantly, they are able to take responsibility of their sexual reproductive health and rights, which reduces things like early marriage and even abortion, because they are now informed about all of these things. And it's really significant because a lot of women in Africa die due to unsafe abortion. Now they know how to take responsibility of their own sexuality. It's very significant to the impact of what we've been able to create in these communities that we've met. Thank you very much.
Thank you.